You may see Police Chief John Carmichael around the city handing out positive tickets to youngsters. This is just one part of the many ways the Newton Police are actively seeking a positive relationship with the community. Here's more on what the police hope to accomplish through reform.
We're here today at police headquarters talking with Chief Carmichael about community-based policing and how that form of policing has impacted residents and members of the community.
So community policing is a philosophy that's been established over time, which primarily focuses on three things. The first thing is department or organizational transformation. So it's a philosophy that creates a culture of a department that engages the community, develops trust and police legitimacy within the community, and as well as it has a component of community engagement. So coming up with different programs and techniques and strategies that the department uses to engage the community to help us build that trust.
This type of policing is not just theoretical. The Newton Police Department is already engaging in initiatives to bring the community members and officers together.
And some of the things like we've done is we've already started a positive tickets program. So that's just one example of something that we can use when we're out in the street where if we catch a kid doing right, doing something good in the community, doing just a random act of kindness, officers see that, they can stop and they can engage the kid, give them a positive ticket, and which we've partnered up with Cabot's right now, so get a free like ice cream cone and that kind of thing. And that's just one way of creating that opportunity where an officer and the community can kind of be engaged.
This strategy helps the police department set an effective agenda for its community members.
Departments that apply the community policing philosophy, they have much better relationships with the community. They're able to work together to solve problems. One of the things I didn't mention in the beginning is that one of the other tenets of community policing is problem-oriented or problem-solving policing. And really what that is it's getting to the underlying issues, the problems that we're dealing with. For example, the substance abuse issues, mental health, and how we deal with our community intervention teams and crisis intervention. So there's a lot of different components that kind of play into that. So problem-solving, problem-oriented policing is very important too.
In practice, community-based policing requires for the culture and environment around policing to shift.
Whenever you're doing the community policing philosophy, you have to have buy-in. It has to be a complete organizational transformation of status quo, what you're used to doing. It has to be a cultural shift in the department.
Given the increase in mental health and substance abuse calls, Chief Carmichael cites specific training and policies to help Newton officers best handle those situations in the field.
We joined the One Mind campaign for the International Chiefs of Police, so a lot of that is about creating policies that address mental health. It's training, so we would train the department in crisis intervention training as well as mental health first aid. And so that's a refocus on kind of those things. And again, early on in my career, some of the mental health calls that we would go on would end up in an arrest. It would end up criminal charges. And so we've transformed away from that more. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen at all, but we try to work to circumvent that or to seek alternatives to arrest.
A topic that police departments across the country have had to grapple with over the past couple of years has been the topic of reform.
Policing's not afraid of reform. As I said, policing has changed over the years. It's constantly evolving. And if you don't change with those, and you don't evolve as a department or as an individual, you're really going to struggle in this job.
Carmichael says that the Newton Police Department recognizes that racial profiling needs to be addressed.
Looking at instances of bias, of race, of situations where of racial profiling and that sort of thing. So we've trained on that. All of the officers in Massachusetts have trained on implicit bias training, on racial profiling training. We've created policies that address that. So again, that transformation, that adapting to the things that we face are happening.
These reforms do operationally impact the way that officers do their work.
The implicit bias training really helps us kind of develop what we do in the street. So being cognizant of the fact that how this other person might feel when you're stopping them, when you're questioning them, when there's any type of encounter in the street. So that's very important. And I can say this, that as over the last 9 to 10 weeks since I've been here, as I engage people in the community, people appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that policing is trying to adapt to those changes.
The nature of community-based policing requires involvement from all members of the community. We talked with Chief Carmichael about how that nature might impact historically unrepresented groups.
So anytime, when we're engaging people in the community, we're engaging everybody. We're engaging all groups, regardless of race, religion, any of that stuff. So that's just kind of what we do. Now, if we felt that if there was a certain group or something that wasn't impacted or felt like they were left out, we would definitely want to identify that and then engage those people as best way that we can. And what I've seen here in Newton is there's so many different groups, and because we have such a great community services unit, we're constantly reaching out to some of the groups that might feel like they've been left out or left behind. So that's constantly happening, like every day.
Successful policing, especially community-based policing, requires feedback. That means that all members of the community are encouraged to respond to the way that the police department handles policing in Newton.
We have to send out a survey every year to the community. So we just recently sent it out, and we did ask a couple more questions in there this year that are relative to community engagement and how the community feels about how we're engaging the community, if we need to do it more, some of the programs that we're offering. So that feedback is always very welcome. And part of the community policing philosophy includes the community actually helping us set the agenda. So we'll take that input and we try and kind of implement that into our daily work and what we do.
Chief Carmichael and the Newton Police Department will continue their community-based policing in order to keep the city safe. I'm Nicole Mader with Newton News.